everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really excited to be joined here by Dan O'Connell, CEO of TalkIQ. I'm Meredith Finn, Senior Director at Salesforce Ventures. I help lead up our U.S. investment practice here at Salesforce. And Dan is actually the CEO of one of our most recent additions to the portfolio, TalkIQ. So really happy to have Dan here to talk about AI startups and their impact on the enterprise today. So
Great.
Dan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited.
Great. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about TalkIQ to sort of start it off?
Yeah, so we're a voice analytics platform. Built our own speech recognition. We do all of our own technology from the telephony piece to capturing calls, the speech recognition to the NLP. We help businesses capture their customer conversations, whether it's on sales side or support, learn from that information so it's fully indexed. But we start to do really interesting, cool things with the data. So we can start telling you on the sales side, is a buyer more likely to buy? We can start telling you if a customer is heading to churn. And we do all of this in the moment, so with no latency. So as you're managing your business or as your agents or sales reps are on the phone, we're actually starting to guide them to have the best conversation possible. And the way that we index the data actually allows your executive team or your managers to understand the trends that are happening within the business and start to react faster.
Great. It's really cool technology. If you have a chance, you guys are going to be demoing actually at Startup Valley, which is right behind this theater later.
Yeah, we'll be here on Wednesday, so stop by and you can say hello to Allie. She will be there.
Their demo is really awesome, so it's definitely worth checking it out if you guys have some time. But sort of given Dan's role, it would be great to pick your brain a little bit and just sort of hear your perspective on how AI is transforming the enterprise. So let's sort of level set a little bit for everyone in the audience. How do you think about where AI is today within the enterprise? We've seen certain consumer applications of AI with Siri, Netflix recommendations, Amazon recommendations. Where are we at in the enterprise today?
Yeah. So I view it as we started this business, we really view it as being in the first innings. That I think there are really practical applications for AI today. I think we all see it in terms of whether it's lead scoring, speech recognition is a massive opportunity that we have technology today that can accurately understand these conversations in the moment, transcribe them with incredible accuracy, and help you understand this last data set that's been offline. And I think the largest initial applications for where we see AI is where we see a lot of manual process and a lot of data. And so we'll see that as we continue to build our business.
Yeah. And what sort of segments of the enterprise have you seen, sort of adopt it, whether it's like certain sectors or groups within the enterprise? And what are some of the qualities of people that are sort of looking at AI opportunistically today?
Yes, I think where we've had a lot of natural inbound interest has been just technology companies. I think especially technology companies based here in the United States are often thinking about innovative technologies. They're thinking about, I have these data needs, I have these dependencies of trying to understand this massive amount of data faster. And these machines can do it faster, more accurate, better than a human can traditionally do. We also see in terms of specific sectors, financial services tends to be innovators in this space of how do we think about layering this technology to have better customer conversations for their call centers. But I would say it's B2B and financial services tend to be the leaders in this space.
Got it. And as you're sort of working with customers and helping them sort of make this transition to AI, what steps do they need to take in order to sort of be ready for this transformation?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I guess I'll ask, just try to get some participation. So how many people are thinking about, within your organizations, are thinking about AI or have an AI strategy? Just raise of hands. Okay, so probably like 40%. How many of you think that AI is going to have a massive implication for our lives or the businesses that we work for in the next 5 to 10 years? So every hand.
Everyone.
So I think a lot of this comes down to, one is having a vision and sparking that conversation within your organization. So understand, what is AI? How do I learn about it? Two is priorities. So what are the practical implications for where AI is today to help me run a better business and drive efficiencies? And then the third is talent. And I think personally, AI can be a really, really scary. When you get into the definitions of AI, I think it can be overwhelming and scary for people. You hear about neural networks, you hear about active learning, you hear about deep learning. And I think it's encouraging everyone within an organization to start understanding what is AI. And if you can start to educate people, that actually allows them to start learning where are the opportunities and how do I actually apply this to the business today. But I think it's really those three things. Have a vision, have priorities of where this can help, and then how do you actually recruit talent and then train and help that talent develop.
Great. Yeah, no, I think solid advice, certainly, as we all try to navigate the waters around AI. And what would sort of make an organization successful in terms of their adoption? How do you sort of get? I mean, your technology is really used by salespeople. How, if there's anyone in the audience that would be sort of looking to implement AI technology across the sales organization, how would you think about very successfully implementing it?
Yeah, so I think one is finding companies that have a synergy that say, hey, I am wasting a lot of time in inefficiencies, whether it's in understanding my customer conversations. So specifically for us, I'm always surprised at the number of businesses that are shadowing calls. They have managers in an archaic way listening to conversations and either doing scoring for compliance or trying to understand, did I have a good conversation or a bad conversation? We can solve all of that, and we can drive efficiencies for managers just instantly. You can go and see what is actually happening in these conversations. I think when we think a little bit broader about our business, we're mapping intent signals. So when I think about forecasting, fundamentally, I think forecasting is really broken for businesses. We rely on humans to go back and think about the 50 conversations they had in the past month and say, was this conversation good? Do I think this buyer is actually going to complete the deal or not? And I think you can take AI and technology that we have today and say, let me map in an unbiased way the purchase intent signals, the number of times the competitor is mentioned, the number of questions that they had to present that information to say, here's what we think is going to happen. This person seems like a more likely buyer or a less likely buyer.
Great. There's a lot of fear out there, I think, when you talk about AI, about looking at, pure human replacement.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that hype came up particularly around chatbots, right? As it was like, oh, we'll be eliminating, whole segments of the enterprise and replacing them with chatbots to sort of interact with customers, particularly as you looked at sales and service. That really sort of hasn't come to fruition. What do you really think, AI is a human replacer?
Yeah.
Is it an augmenter? What do you think sort of the role is between sort of AI and humans?
Yeah. I personally fall in the camp of seeing AI as enhancing what we do today. I view it specifically for our business as we're not removing anybody from call centers. We're simply helping people have better conversations and move faster and guide them to have the best customer experience. And we think that brings about happy customers. So I definitely don't fall in the camp of, our robot overlords are going to replace every single one of us. I think it is, we can utilize AI to continue to up-level ourselves, our businesses. But I also think AI is going to be one of these technologies that opens up a wealth of opportunities that we're not even thinking about. As I said, I view all of this as being in the first innings today. We're not even thinking about what this technology will be able to do 5 or 10 years from now. And for me, I personally think that that's just creating more jobs.
Yeah, great. So you mentioned the future there, right? What's sort of your vision, I guess, as you look at TalkIQ or as you're seeing the industry, sort of mature? I think you're right. One of the first applications we saw, as you mentioned earlier, is lead scoring.
Yeah.
Which was probably the 1.0. We're now seeing sort of some more interesting applications. What you guys do in terms of NLP, sort of sentiment analysis, is incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
What do you sort of see, at least the medium term, looking like in terms of the role of AI?
Yeah, so I think I'll talk a little bit about ourselves. This is probably a little bit easier way for me to describe it. Like for us, it's let us, in the moment, understand a conversation. Let us go automate completely any follow-up task that you had. So if somebody says, hey, I need this, we could go and automate that. We can understand the ask and actually go and grab some PDF from a data warehouse and send it off. We could go and synthesize the notes and use machines to actually take a 45-minute conversation, condense it down to a paragraph or a couple meaningful sentences, and log that in Salesforce. We can go do all of these interesting things that I think are going to happen in the medium term. We look at, as we think about our business, I think internal meetings, right? How many times do you show up to a meeting and somebody's not paying attention, they're on their laptop trying to answer? We can go do that. You can go and use AI and speech recognition to actually go and automate all of these processes. And that's stuff that I think is going to happen literally in the next year. And do it really, really well. I think it is a little bit surprising at how good this technology is and exponentially how much better it will get.
Yep, great. Well, we'd love to open it up to the audience to take some questions, and make sure that we're answering those burning questions that are on your minds. Any questions for Dan or, sort of on AI in general?
You may need to count. We can barely hear you. Sorry.
What are some of the factors making you grow exponentially? Making AI grow exponentially?
Yeah, so it's actually so when you think about it, it's access to data, right? Our biggest opportunity really just comes down to we're speech recognition. So the more audio data we can get access to, we're connected to Salesforce. So what's really interesting for our business is we know when you say a particular thing, we know the outcome. So over time, we actually start to learn, here's the best way you should have this conversation. When you offer a discount, maybe it doesn't lead to as many closed deals as it does when you offer a free trial. Which really interesting thing. So for when you talk about AI, not outside of just our business, all comes down to data, more access to data. I think a challenge for these businesses is fragmentation of the data. I think a lot of people probably experience that in their businesses today, which is you have all of this data and it's in different data warehouses. If you can get access to one central hub and put machine learning on top of that one hub, then it comes obviously better. But I think the biggest thing is just access to data.
Yeah. So the question is, how much data do you need in order to get started?
Yeah. I would probably defer that to my head of data science, but so it depends. Would be also what I learned in business school is you can answer every question. It depends. So it depends. For us, we need 6 to 8 hours of audio data to do things like customized language, which is not a lot when you think about a call center. You can do that, get 6 hours of audio data. If you got 50 people in a call center or 1,000 people, it's a couple minutes. So I don't necessarily have a perfect answer for you. I never think it's, our head of data science would probably hate this answer I'm going to say. I think if you are ever being challenged with a data set, it can never be too small. I think if it's just one, then probably too small. Anyway, I'm going to stop on that answer.
Yes. Yep. Sure. So the question is about languages and how do you solve the problem of having different languages within your data set? Yeah. So part of the reason when we first started the business, we actually looked at a number of cloud speech APIs that were out there today. So you look at Google, they have Google Cloud Speech. Amazon has Lex. There's Siri with Apple. There's a number of others. When we looked at building our business, they didn't have the accuracy or the speed that we needed. They also didn't have customization, which is the specific answer to you. That when you talk about speech recognition and for telephony, telephony audio is really bad audio. So it's scaled down from 44 kilohertz to 8 kilohertz. That you need to be able to customize language models and customize acoustic models specifically for different regions, different dialects, different accents. So part of the reason we did this ourselves as opposed to building a platform on top of somebody else's is in order to be successful at what we do, in order to accurately transcribe conversations, because anything we do on the NLP data side builds on top of that. If you can't transcribe a conversation well, then your predictions are bad on top of that. Really comes down to customization. That gets back to this gentleman's question, which is just access to data, right? So when we work with businesses, if they have access to audio data that they've had, if they can pass that to us, this allows us to learn very quickly. Sure. Yeah, so the question is about non-conversational aspects. Are we close to being able to analyze things like tone or other elements that aren't related to the speech itself?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for us, we are solving context of conversations. So when we talk about sentiment mapping and intent, it's using NLP, so natural language processing, to identify all of the different ways that you may express that you're happy or whether you are likely a buyer. I do think if you can couple that data set with tone, so irregularities in voice, or I'm sounding excited, or I'm sounding frustrated, then that's a perfect combination of the two things. Something that machines don't do well with today, to no surprise, is sarcasm. So if you were going to have a sarcastic conversation and we were recording it and you said, I'm not going to buy that, we would actually today look at that as potentially saying, like, you are a buyer. And so that really comes down to the training set and learning how to read that in other nuanced ways. If maybe that's one specific moment of you being sarcastic, but the 8 others always show that you didn't have we weren't like a buyer. But to your answer, I think there is an opportunity to do that. An interesting question that we get asked was, well, if we could tell you that you're lying, would you want to know that? Would we want that tool out there?
Really interesting. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was, what are the legal requirements for call recording? So only 8 states require dual consent, which is if I initiate a call, I need to tell you that we're recording a conversation. Best way around, if you're in dual consent, California is one of those, is we just teach people to say, hey, this is Dan, I'm calling from a recorded line. Nice part of inbound conversations for call centers, they pretty much tell you, hey, we're recording this conversation for quality assurance. I'm sure many of us have heard that. So for any dual consent states, really non-starter, like not an issue. You can manage around it. For all of the others, it's just single consent. So you actually don't need to inform folks to do that. Single consent meaning just one party. If I know I'm recording the call, that's good. Which sounds a little counterintuitive, but I didn't make the law.
Any other questions from the audience? Well, I've got one more for you. Just as you've thought about building your business, right? Obviously, you guys started with a really bold idea around, building a speech recognition engine and trying to build a best-in-class speech recognition engine, doing that in real time. I mean, you guys have really built some pretty impressive technology. When you thought about building the team, what were sort of some of the elements, given you guys view yourselves as an AI company, what were some of the elements of bringing that team together that were most important? Yeah,
so really 2 things. And I loved the conversation before that I was sitting in about starting your startup, and he actually nailed the perfect point, which is you need kind of 2 sides. For us, we needed a really, really technical team. So we're 22 folks today, 16 are technical. We have 6 PhDs on staff. They're PhDs with PhD in computational neuroscience. We have speech recognition, PhDs in linguistics. And so the opportunity for us is this is real tech. And we need people that can train the machines and build the algorithms and know the requirements of data labeling. And we also need people like Ali that have been in sales and customer success for years and know how to talk about this in a way that resonates with customers. So for us, it's very much we need the experts in data science and the engineering team. And they have very specific requirements around machine learning and linguistics and speech recognition. Some of those best people are in academia. They're not out there today because this really is a new industry or a new technology. So I do think there's a massive shortage of talent on the data science side and the machine learning side that I think we will all face.
Got it. Any questions? Nope. And I think as you sort of see, companies emerge in this category in general, what are sort of some of the trends? What aspects and parts of the enterprise are you seeing companies go after the most?
Yeah, so I think there's some really fantastic companies doing chat automation. So we've seen that today. Lead scoring is another, I think, massive opportunity. Forecasting, we're thinking about that. Obviously, how can we just enhance customer conversations? We got really excited about what we were doing because voice is this last data set that has traditionally been offline. In my past, I was running a 150-person sales organization, and I can't tell you how many times I would show up to work. Somebody would say, this competitor came up, and this competitor is eating our lunch, and there was no way to actually tell you how often even that competitor was being mentioned. And for us, like, this is the power of voice, is we can actually start to quantify this data set, and you can do it in the moment and instantly. So I think we'll see massive implications for speech, chatbots, lead generation, lead scoring.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us as well. Great to have you. And again, come check out TalkIQ. They're going to be in Startup Valley Wednesday.
On Wednesday. And then if you want to have a conversation, just grab me or Ellie. We're happy to chat.
Great. Thanks so much,
Thanks.
everyone.